I've never gone snowboarding, but I've always had a love for snowboarding video games. Even back in the era of flip phones, I have memories of playing snowboarding games on that tiny little screen. And I'm no expert when it comes to these games because I don't play them often at all, but when I do see the opportunity to try one, I will. I think they can be a lot of fun. So, when I saw the curious description of Evolution Snowboarding, a 2003 game by Konami, of course I gave it a try. Because this isn't your ordinary kind of snowboarding game where you just hit the slopes, do some tricks, and maybe grind some rails. This game does have all of that, but this is honestly more of a game about combat than about snowboarding. You might be asking yourself, how can a snowboarding game have combat of all things? Well, we must turn to the plot of this game's mission mode for that. Evolution Snowboarding is pretty unclear about some of the plot specifics, so I'll explain as best as I possibly can, because it's pretty crazy. You start by breaking out of some sort of prison, chased by humanoid creatures looking to stop you, and if they can't stop you, kill you. These are the boardroids, and they want to take over the world, I guess. They're changing the climate with some big machines so that it's cold and snowy everywhere, and I'm not sure what their goal within that is. Maybe they just really want to snowboard everywhere. But that doesn't explain why they also have a cloning facility that's mentioned in one sentence. So, with climate change and cloning, it's hard to say what exactly these boardroids want, but you do have to beat up a lot of them. The game is laid out like this. There are a variety of different locations with 10 missions each. There are different types of mission goals, like getting a certain amount of points, defeating a certain amount of thugs, or reaching the end in a certain amount of time. After you complete the first 3 missions of an area, the 10th will unlock for you to fight the boss character of that section. These bosses are definitely an odd bunch of mismatched characters, from a samurai to an invisible man to just a lady with a boomerang, and plenty in between. We don't learn much about these characters before we kill them all off, but they do have some fun mediocre voice acting in their short clips.
Why have you entered my mountainous region?
You go about destroying these enemies with basically just 2 buttons, one for punch, one for kick. You can also pick up a variety of different weapons as you're snowboarding, which your character will use with the punch button. And I don't think I ever really used the kick much. It was rather slow, and speed is really important in these fights. You have no way to defend against attacks except by evading them, so being able to get in close, attack quickly, and then get away is how most of these boss fights will go. There are also some other aspects of fighting that aren't really addressed in the tutorial in the game. It would have been helpful to know that if your Technic stat is high enough, your board will shoot electricity to hit thugs when you do spins. But no, I had to learn that from this very detailed and helpful guide on game FAQs by Trip, which was definitely helpful in teaching me some tricks that the game doesn't mention. Or maybe these things are all listed in the game manual instead of the tutorial, which I did not have available to read, so I guess I can give it the benefit of the doubt for now. And maybe the manual also might have had some more info about the plot, since some older games definitely give you more extra context in their manuals. However, I doubt it. The plot is pretty useless, so I doubt they actually thought about it that much. Even though, as I said, it's not the most thorough tutorial, I definitely suggest you do it before starting the first missions. I didn't do that and made it through okay, but there's a lot that is hard to figure out on your own. So yes, I did make it through the first 3 or 4 areas without having done the tutorial, but after that, the game difficulty definitely ramps up and you'll want all the help you can get. As I mentioned with the Technic stat, you can improve your snowboarder's different stats with the points you win from completing missions. Stuff like attack, defense, speed, etc. These are also affected by your stance on the board, which you can edit a bit, and also what clothes you wear, which you can collect in different areas of the slopes. This game contains real sportswear brands if you care about that sort of thing, and also about 10 different real snowboarders that you can play as in any mission except for the boss fights. They have way better stats than your player character will, so they can really help you get through those missions faster. They join your side as you go through story mode, but they aren't actually important to it as characters. Back to the story, after you make it through all the areas and defeat their bosses, you reach the big core to do the final fight. This is actually less of a fight and more about your snowboarding skills, which is a surprise when that doesn't really matter much in any of the other boss levels. But it's a very long and treacherous slope where you have to use speed to make it past a lot of flying bullets and bombs. One thing I learned in Trip's walkthrough is that you are invincible as long as you are spinning, so you can just spam spins to really help get past these trap sections. But hey, if you get too hurt, just look for a hunk of meat to eat. That'll heal you. I've always wondered how that started in games, when you just eat food to heal. This final level is extremely difficult. There is almost no wiggle room for error. It's a bunch of hallways filled with little guns firing at you, and even the spinning defense doesn't work great against them since it slows you down and gives them even more opportunity to shoot at you. I got really close to the end of it, which I am very proud of, just a few yards away from the final jump before I got hit by another bullet. I failed a dozen more times and eventually just gave up on it because I'd been having a bad week of gaming and needed a break. I might go back and try again with a clearer head, but I went ahead and looked to see if anyone else on YouTube had won it already, and got to see the ending thanks to Incetic47. And it's definitely not an ending worth the effort. Everything pretty much happens off screen, and it just closes very quickly. And then you get the credits behind some Slipknot music. Oh yeah, that's one of the most random parts of this game. I don't know if the band Slipknot likes snowboarding or something, but the fact that their music is in the game is even pointed out in the opening, so it's heavily featured. You get a lot of different metal music playing over each level, behind the thugs yelling their little phrases at you like, there is a bit of personality like that sprinkled in there, so it's too bad we didn't get to see more of these quirky villains. It's a shame that they didn't do more with the plot, since Konami is the company behind very story-rich games like Metal Gear Solid. But I suppose most sports games aren't really about the story, so it's understandable. This game does play in more of an arcade style. Fast levels all about getting a certain time or score. So, Evolution Snowboarding isn't what I would normally want in a snowboarding game, as I'd rather be enjoying my time on the halfpipe instead of having the threat of being punched constantly looming in my peripheral, but I do think the game is so out of the box that it makes it worth an experience. Though it's not the best game in my opinion. Some things do feel really good, like the physics of the way the snowboard moves back and forth, but the combat, which is quite a bit of the game, is clunky and not that much more than just pressing one button most of the time. But the game has hours upon hours of potential to collect all the clothing and get gold on every level. It's not something to play for the story or graphics or great gameplay. The graphics look a little clearer here because I was running on an emulator, but it's something you can enjoy grinding at and getting better. And if you like metal music, there's that for you too. So Evolution Snowboarding is entertaining for a little while at least. I got quite a few hours out of it, and definitely there's way more I could spend. But it's not something that would become anyone's favorite. It's the kind of weird thing that's just fun to say you've played, and one that's surprisingly difficult in parts. Or maybe my gaming skills have just been going downhill these days. I would recommend this to people keen on snowboarding since you get these famous snowboarders and whatnot, but at the same time, it's not great for snowboarding fans since the focus is more on combat than snowboarding. So if you give the game a try, go into it with the expectation that it's not amazing. That way you can just enjoy the eccentricities without feeling let down. And that's really all there is to say about it. I wish I could say more about this climate change villain plot because that's so interesting, but it's all reduced to little paragraphs between levels with nothing more in the end. And just like this game's quick ending, I think I'll wrap up the review here. I'm going back into snowboarding retirement for a little while, unless I find another game that looks just as amusing as this one. I'm glad I checked it out, even if it's not great. So my friends, stay cool, stay groovy, and don't forget...
Thus far and no further, foolish knaves. By controlling the environment as we wish, we ensure a bright future for our race. You foolish oafs cannot understand this need. You will be imprisoned in ice for an eternity of extinction.